This is Izzy Dakota Jones, hanging out and talking to you with the Art of Doing podcast with Danny Casavant. Danny Casavant is a well-known guitar player, singer, songwriter from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and who's played with many great bands, the Blue Shadows, Billy Colsell, you can name it. There's lots. We'll be talking about all the projects that Danny's played in and is previously playing on, and just talk about rock and roll and rock music in general, and all the great stories Danny has. So we'll be talking to Danny Casavant. Hang in there on the Art of Doing podcast. Izzy Dakota Jones. So, Danny, you're originally from Winnipeg, Manitoba, right?
Well, I was actually born in Tisdale, Saskatchewan.
Oh!
I was raised in Winnipeg from the time I was about 5 and a half.
Right on.
Yeah.
So of course, because of the the music that we're all in, but you came from a very musical area, right? Like Winnipeg is, in Canada is well known as a great hub around that time of period, especially.
Well, it's got a deep history, definitely, and I mean in terms of rock and roll and country music, there's deep roots there for sure. And I mean, I came up being born in 1951. I was sort of the next generation of guys after guys like Chad Allen, the Expressions, and Ray St. Germain, and all the people who preceded us. But so I came into a band when I was in 1966.
Right.
And so it's all post shaken all over, which was the big things that Chad Allen, the Expressions, getting on the American Billboard was shaken all over. And it was, the guys they were the first band I ever saw.
Wow.
Grade 7.
Yeah. And I guess and came all the people that came out of there beside Chad and and Burton and everybody like that. There was also
Neil Young.
I was just gonna say, you just read my mind. I'm saying Neil Young, and so you must have saw some pretty interesting cats.
Well, actually, it's interesting is that we all like pretty much all young musicians in that era, we patterned ourselves after seeing guys play live. There's so many good bands in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So we watched them. We go see the Guess Who. We see all these bands that you wouldn't even know the names of them. But there's very high level of playing and singing. Singing was a big part of the thing. One of the things that was strong about there was a Mersey beat. When the Beatles happened.
Right.
That was a really big, stronger than say Toronto, which was more rhythm and blues.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bit of a tradition that we, that like our first band, we were like a bunch of others. We all had these little gigs in what they call community clubs.
Right.
And there was a circuit. Neil Young even said it was the center of all rock and roll in Canada, and some people call it the Liverpool of Canada.
Right.
So we came up in that thing, and myself personally, I learned how to play. I started playing when I was quite young. Actually, I started playing when I was 9.
Wow, yeah.
But I didn't know anything. That was like I had to choose between Hawaiian or Spanish guitar when I took guitar lessons.
Yeah.
So it was very, very early, very primitive.
Yeah.
Making a bit of noise here. That's really what meant. Anyway,
it's all part of it.
We all came through this thing of watching the big guys, and the big guys were, the guys everybody knows about in the real big world is the Guess Who, but there was a wealth of great bands.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I mean, it just, you can tell that, and like one of the famous questions is always gets asked, I guess it's just because where it's located. Where do you think, what gave birth to all that music? Is it the dark winters, or what I'm trying to say? What was it?
Yeah. I think it's multiple factors. I think some of them are cultural.
Yeah.
Because of the prairies are very harsh, and so people are more dependent on each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's more of a community, and I think that's one of the real central things is real sense of community.
Yeah.
And the different types of music that came as a result of the different ethnicities that existed there. The Métis thing was very, the Scottish Irish, the Ukrainian, the French Canadian.
Yeah.
All of these things, brought the fiddle music and the guitar and all that stuff was, preceded in kind of rock and roll.
Yeah.
But what it did is, like, the accordion was huge, so a lot of guys learned how to play that, and then they played the organ. You know, they learned how to play the keyboard. Every home had a piano. You know, that was just the way it was, and you made your own music, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, you had that coupled with, you know, a bunch of other factors. One of them, I think, being, you know, just the rise of rock and roll, you know, and television.
Yeah.
And radio. Actually, radio was huge.
Yeah. Yeah, radio was huge back then, and that sort of set the trend, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't know if you're the same age as me or not, but similar anyway. You can relate to that. I mean, you grew up in a different city, different circumstances. But I think a lot of things are common. I think the radio is the big one.
Oh yeah, I mean, radio was so huge back then, you know, and because television was just coming into the households, you know, it really started. You said, but it become a multimedia thing. But you know, like you said, like I think music was also so big too because we had you know, how can I say it? When the artist showed up in town, you know, that's because you heard the song on the radio, and that's the only other time you had a chance to really, you know, check the band out, or you know, you had. You know, when there wasn't a lot of cover bands when I started playing music either.
That's all there was in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I mean, out here there wasn't as much. There was some. It took a while for it to pick up out here. Actually there was quite an original scene out here for a long time. Like you know, a lot of the cats you know in town. You know.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about the history since coming here through, you know, people like Rob Frith and people I know that and other musicians and stuff. And, you know, one of the big uniting things in Canada was a CBC show called Let's Go.
Yeah.
Where they had, you remember that show? Let's Go was a national television.
Yeah, yeah.
Halifax, Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Vancouver.
Yeah.
So you got a taste of what was going across the country. And, you know, the records that would come out, you know, I mean, the records actually, you know, Winnipeg, man, the number of 45s, and they were, you know, like, well, Shaken All Over was obviously a big one, but there was numerous 45s that were cut in Winnipeg, and they were cut in CKRC radio mostly. Yeah. No real studios. There was an Albion studio, but it was years before there was like sort of legitimate studios. Mm-hmm. But people cut, and there was a record label called Eagle or something like that. I can't remember, but all the records that we got by the bands were older than us, you know, like the little bands, right? You know, like the Love and Kind, the bands. They were cut on these 45s, and I mean, Neil Young did his first record in CKRC, Aurora and the Sultan, and they're both instrumentals. Wow! And these guys would just put them in boxes, and they'd go out and they'd play out in the boonies, and they'd play at community clubs, and you know, and that was kind of one of the ways that they tried to make it. And they went to DJs mostly. Yes, went to DJs. It was more of that than it was selling. Yeah, it was more of that, actually. It wasn't so much that they were selling them as much as they were promoting themselves and trying to get a big deal. Yeah, yeah. And I think technically that's almost what it's like nowadays too, in a lot of ways. Still, it's turned around. MP3s are the new 45s, right? Yeah, exactly. So you made your way out here. When did you come out to Vancouver, Dan? Well, I moved here permanently in '83. Okay. Yeah, and so and I know you. One person I know you played with and really got great history with is Billy Colsall too, right? Oh, but there's guys before that. Yeah, I mean, I did the highest profile thing I ever did in my life was in '79 recording in Los Angeles, Graham Charles and Sincere Serenaders. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, and we had a hit. We had a hit called "Can I Come Here?" Okay. And you know, so I mean, I got really hooked up. You know, like just to sort of back up slightly. Yeah. You know, I obviously came up the way I came up, like we all came up, and different people went different directions. You know, I mean, I was really interested in a lot of different stuff, jazz being one of them. I ended up taking lessons from a guy named Lenny Breau. Oh, yes. Just like genius guitar player who happened to be in Winnipeg at a particular time. I was able to take some lessons, as Backman did too, actually, 10 years previous to me. And so there was a real guitar culture, like it was a real guitar town, Winnipeg, and really a guitar town. And in any case, you know, like I ended up going to a college, Grappicuan in Edmonton. I went away for a couple of years and I studied jazz and whatever. I was really into that, but it was also I was a rocker from the time. So was always in my blood. I don't think I ever could have ever let that go. But I got informed and I became a wider guitar player. And you know what? It's very similar. I mean, not that I don't necessarily compare, but I think that there's a versatility factor that Bachman had that was a real model.
Mm-hmm.
When you listen to like On Done, but then you listen to No Time.
Yeah.
It's like two different guys, but it is the same guy. And I became one of those real sort of versatile type guitar players who had a lot of different things going.
Yeah.
And I grew into, when I came out of the school, came back to Winnipeg, I got a house gig in a place called the Town and Country, which gave me some profile. All of a sudden the people are coming out and they're seeing me play, and I'd just been one of many guys playing in bars and whatever. And, I had some notoriety, amongst guitar players and whatever. But it was at the time when there was a lot of singer-songwriters happening, and I ended up getting linked up with a bunch of them, playing with people like Tom Jackson,
oh wow,
Rick Neufeld, and all these guys. And I became a real part of that community of players. I started recording. At that point, and started getting a bit of a reputation as a player in the studio, and I started playing with really good people. I started playing with the older guys,
mm-hmm.
and that was a really big thing. At the age of mid-20s, right? I was 24, 25 years old, and it was coming up, and I really was sort of a part of a very developing scene in Winnipeg.
Right.
There was a couple of real studios. One of them being Road Studio, where Burton did his demos for his first solo record, Stand Tall on the Left.
Yeah.
So, and Kurt Winter was hanging out there, and all these guys. So, I mean, I was kind of swimming with those guys, and I ended up playing on, McLean and McLean record, all sorts of, like crazy stuff, right? But also, really, a lot of good, serious records. And I ended up getting asked to join a group called Graham Shaw and Sincere Serenaders, because the guitar player was leaving, Chris Anderson, who was one of my idols, actually. It's kind of scary, to get into that band, because Chris was like one of my favorite guitar players. An older guy, right?
Yes.
From me, older than me. Like, I think he's 71 now, and I'm 68. So that much difference in time made a big difference back then.
Mm-hmm.
What ended up happening is Graham got a deal with Capitol Records, and it was a big deal. He got managed by the Bernies in Toronto, Bernie Fiedler, Bernie Finkelstein.
Yeah.
Who very big. We ended up going to LA and recording for Capitol Records. And, it was a big deal, a big studio, living on Sunset Strip, the whole deal. And, young and totally whatever. I didn't know it was pretty weird.
Yeah.
But in any case, out of that record, I got kind of a bit of notoriety across Canada because I was a part of that band, and also the record was a hit. The one song, Can I Come Near? So even though, I was just a small part of the whole thing, really, because Graham was the guy, because he's still around. He's a great songwriter. And, he's the guy who got signed. The band didn't get signed. It was the band was simply the band.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I came out the other end of that one, and I ended up getting plugged into becoming pretty active in the session world in Winnipeg, like really active. And in fact, CBC did a national special on Jazzland.
Wow.
1981. Yeah, no, really. I mean, in those days, I was really active and playing a lot. And but I got kind of tired of being in Winnipeg at a certain point. I've been there for a few years. I'd come out for a visit a couple of times to Vancouver, and I had a girlfriend out here, and then my mom was out here, my brother was out here. And I had to tear myself away from Winnipeg. It took a couple of tries, because I really had a lot of deep roots. And I came out here, and getting back to what you mentioned about Calso, that came a little bit later. I ended up hooking up with an old buddy of mine from Winnipeg. We played in bands together, a guy named Bob White.
Yep.
He was a tremendous singer, guitar player, and we ended up forming a little duo because it was quite a market for duos out here. And he played bass, and I played multiple guitars and synth guitars in. And we lasted for 7 years.
Yep.
And then he ended up going to play in the Roxy, in the house band, the Cyril McCoys, and I ended up playing with guys like Billy Cowsill and various others. I played with Fred Penner on tours and stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot in the country scene, did a lot of sessions in the country scene. So that takes up to about the early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You can ask me some questions of it.
I know. You're doing good. I just let you go, Dan.
It's okay. Ask me some more questions. Right?
Yeah. When like I'm interested with Billy because you and I know I played with the other guy who played guitar. I'm trying to remember his name from Winnipeg. Was in the
Jeff.
Yeah, with Jeff. And so Jeff told me some interesting stories sometimes, like and about Billy, and I know other people that know Billy, and Billy was just
real history. That guy.
Oh man, major history. So I mean, some of the gigs must have been just like because I remember the Blue Shadows at one point. They were like everywhere you guys played, it was packed.
I wasn't in the Blue Shadows.
Oh, you weren't in the?
No, I wasn't. Man, that was Jeff as the guitar player.
Okay.
I was in the band previous to me was Lindsay Mitchell. Previous to Lindsay was Colin James.
Okay.
But, yeah, Colin Munn is his real name.
Yeah.
But yeah, in any case, no, my time with Billy was much more of freewheeling. Wasn't focused on. It wasn't so career oriented as much as we were playing like the house gig. We played at Fairview, we played Darby's, we played Bimini's, we played all over the place. But Rusty Gull, one-nighters and parties, that kind of thing. But we did do a bunch of demoing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I've got all of the demos actually.
Wow.
And there's some really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
This is previous to Blue Shadows, right?
Yeah, this is previous. Yeah.
Yeah, this is previous to Blue Shadows, and I worked doing live, and I did the studio, and then in the studio they brought in some other really good session players, steel players, keyboard players, fiddle players. It was really quite good, and the fact that Billy was so much a studio rat, his demos were like records.
Yeah, I bet.
They weren't like a cassette player with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
It's not like that.
No, it was.
It was an amazing time for me because I was really the right guy. Lindsay would have to go back to prison, and I happened to be living in the same little enclave above a pizza parlor where Elmar, the bass player, lived. And
yeah.
Colin James lived across the hall from me.
I know. What was funny was I remember we
Olympia.
The Olympia. They were talking all about like all the musicians that lived in that area. It was pretty cool at one point, right?
Oh, in that building, in that particular little, there was four, Jack Lavin, Elmar, Colin James, myself, and there was a couple other people that came and went, right?
Right.
But it was quite a community, and those are the days when, it was all about, what lured me into Vancouver was all of the activity around places like the Anchor and the Penny Wheel and the Town Palm, all of that, right?
Yeah.
So that lured me out here.
Yeah.
And I ended up kind of being part of the scene. And when Lindsay was leaving Billy, Billy had actually seen me and Bob play together. We were really, really good singers together.
Yeah.
It was very good, So in any case, Billy was aware of me, and Elmar was aware of me. So Elmar just says, hey, well, can you sub for Lindsay? In the beginning, it was just subbing. And then it was just like, this was a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Lindsay decided to go, then basically I became the guy. And
that's so cool.
A fair amount of time with those guys. It was something else.
Right.
And and in the end, the same thing that always happens,
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah. Well, what can you say? And then, you got back working with Bob again, right? When you guys got the Bobcats going, right?
Well, that's years later, though.
Okay.
I came out of playing with Billy, and then I was really plugged into the country scene already, and I also got connected up again with a guy I had recorded with in Winnipeg, the children's entertainer Fred Penner.
Okay.
And I toured across Canada and also down the west coast of the States. And there were very big gigs in those days. I mean, he was really, really big. We played the Orpheum, places like that, the Royal.
Yeah.
In Victoria, we played the Universal Amphitheater in LA.
Oh, wow.
But we played some big gigs, and it was, but obviously, that shows, the kind of flexibility I had. I was able to go in that direction after playing with Billy Powell, right?
Right.
So, but I was also quite involved. I was still playing with Billy actually when I did that tour with Fred, and there was a bit of a break, and so I did that. I did
Wow.
one was Western Canadian, one was went all the way across to Ottawa,
Okay.
and then the other one was down the coast, down the west coast. So, but I was doing all these sessions and stuff in Vancouver, and I became really involved in the. At that point, the country scene was really rocking, like the early '90s.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And so I got really involved in doing a lot of recording and playing live. And
Yeah,
did a little bit of touring, and I played with a young woman named Lisa Brokaw.
Yes, I remember Lisa. Yeah. I've met Lisa quite a few times. Yeah.
I played on her first single that was that got noticed, "Time to Come Back Home," and
Right on.
that really was a big one.
Wow.
Yeah, that, and I was playing with the big boys at that point. And, so anyway, that went on and on and on. And then there was a period of time when I don't know, I just, for whatever reason, I mentioned Lenny Breau earlier. I was always kind of digging around looking for recordings of Lenny and whatever. It was just sort of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had recorded my lessons when I played with Lenny, and on reel to reel.
Right on.
And, so yeah. Anyway, what I ended up doing is I wanted to buy a Gretsch guitar at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an old friend named Marty Kramer. You know Kramer.
Yeah.
And Kramer at that point was managing Randy Back and doing all of this stuff. And talking to Kramer, he says, "Well, and I knew that Randy had the largest collection of Gretches in the world. So what he did is he connected me with Randy. He gave Randy my phone number, and Randy phoned me. And we had a conversation around the guitar, but the conversation went, like, hey, he used to play with Graham Shaw. Whatever happened to him? And, what are you doing now? And yak. And Lenny Breau came up in the conversation, and we both sort of agreed that, he didn't really get his due notoriety, even though he was a legend. And out of that whole thing, long story short, I ended up sharing, putting on cassette those recordings, and he was really knocked out, and he formed a record label, which I did all the research for.
Wow.
Called Guitar Archives. Yeah. I spent 3 years doing that.
Wow.
3 years, yeah, and the CDs that came out of that were a result of my research. I did traveling and sourcing recordings. And it was quite an adventure.
Wow, that is.
Yeah, that was that thing. And then I came out of that, and I formed an R&B band. After that thing came with a guy named Mike Henry, who was a great artist.
Yes, I remember Mike Henry. Yeah.
Yeah, great singer. Still around. He's still quite active.
Yeah.
And, we ended up forming a quartet with Daryl Mays.
Right.
Daryl Mays on drums, and I'm going to get away from these guys. Yeah. Daryl Mays on drums, a guy named Dave Stone.
I remember Dave Stone, the keyboard player.
And all those guys.
Yeah. I met Dave.
And he played left-hand bass, and we had Mike and myself on guitar, and it fit, like it was good, right?
Yeah.
And but we ended up morphing it into a large band.
Ah.
And we ended up doing a full-on R&B band with, we had Christine Duncan on vocals with them. We had Steve Hilliam and Barry Byrne on trumpet, saxon trumpet.
Wow.
And, yeah, it was really good. And we did that for about 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was a period of time when it crossed over because Bob and I reunited.
Yes.
In 2001.
Yes.
And for a period of time, it was crossing calendars and making things balance between other things that Mike was doing and things I was doing. The thing I was doing was, developing the Bobcats.
Yes.
And that started as a trio, and it turned into a quartet that lasted for 16 years.
That's wild, eh?
Yep.
That is really wild. And you guys, like Danny, like you've seen it since you've been here. You've seen this, especially in Vancouver. You've seen the change in the scene, like you and I always chat about, right? It's so.
It's a whole different world. I mean, the whole world has changed, but it's certainly not the same city that you grew up here. I came to. I hate to say it, but it's. I think there is a vibrant scene in Vancouver. I think it's just quite different, and it's much more underground.
Yes, and I do too. And like I bumped into the other day at a jam, I bumped into Elio, and Elio and I were talking and we were talking about some young players, players that we know right now that say they're in their late 20s and stuff and early 30s, and like Elio says, they just don't get it. Like they don't get to play as often as we all did, right? Like
it's a different learning curve.
Yeah, and it's actually, Elio says, it's actually tougher because they don't understand that it probably even takes twice as long to get more things done than you did 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Like
more like 20 years ago, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say more like 20.
It's been changing. We've all watched it. It's all post Expo. There was a hump of gigs with Expo that was just unbelievable, and it tapered off over time. Right?
Mm-hmm.
As Vancouver changed and became much more money oriented and real estate, etc. And the bar thing basically died. The demographics, computers.
Yeah.
Everything just changed, right? So
yeah,
what you're looking at with young players now, this is a lot of really accomplished young players. There's killer players and a lot of good writers.
Yes.
And but their world is different from the world we grew up in.
Oh yeah.
But it's more challenging in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Because we could in the day, even though we weren't making any real money, we could actually make enough money to put gas in the car, food in the fridge.
Yeah.
Buy clothes, buy gear. And without having a day job.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Now, unless you're real career oriented and I think you have to be very diversified.
Yes.
And I think that adaptation is something that is, for older guys like me, is I'm old now. It doesn't matter, but it's more difficult. The ones that it's like Darwin already.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't adapt, then you survive, right?
Yes, and that's true. And the thing is, I think you're right. Like back in the day, we could do that. I think the only thing I think nowadays that I get from younger players, like when Elle and I were just talking, and I don't know if you agree, but what I get too is, it was over years, like when we talked, different styles and genres of music. Now it's all kinds of music. But the thing is what I've noticed is a lot of people get pigeonholed these days, and I'm sure they have for a long time, but get pigeonholed into a certain style or sound. I think what Al was trying to say, and I got this out of the interview with you, is that we played a lot more. There was variety of styles that we played, and
different guys are different though. I know guys that were real hardcore rock type guys or cover type bands that never played country, that never played jazz, never did any folk music. I'm talking historical.
Yeah.
So now I think that it's I think that the players that are surviving are the people that are like I said earlier about my little career.
Yeah.
You have to be able to have a good handle. It's a lot more education now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more education. You see a lot of really, really good players coming out of schools.
Yes.
And, the irony is that, the skill sets are, I'd say that their skill sets are higher, like the GIT and all these places that developed since the 80s.
Yeah.
You've got guys that are, frankly, they're monsters.
Yes.
And great singers, great players, and a lot of good writers.
Yes.
So the irony is that they're not being remunerated enough that they can survive on that unless they're diversified.
Exactly. Because that's what I've noticed. Because I've noticed that some of the players, the players I got now in my bands. The good thing right now, I've got a few players that are like what we're saying. They play a lot of different styles. So the good thing about that is that they can bring something to the songwriting that can not exactly have to be in that genre, that style, right? You know what I mean?
You can morph things into things.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But the trouble is when you're marketing things now, I think that it is really sort of very specific. Actually, things that are radically different now. It's a long shot.
Yeah.
You'll see things that are really creative, but the days of getting a record deal are over, right?
Yes.
That doesn't even exist. So that whole thing it's much more self-directed.
That's
it's
right.
more about, building your own career. It's the thing I see with, whereas anything I ever did, I was just on the shirt tails of whoever was doing something.
Right,
I was
right.
a guitar player or whatever, and I did some writing. When I was with Big Dog, we did some writing. Stuff
Right on.
But that was never my career. Whereas there's guys that's really who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But guys like Graham Shaw, is multi-instrumentalist. He's ridiculously talented.
Mm-hmm.
But, he is primarily a composer and a songwriter.
Right.
And those kind of guys, they're out there now, man. One of the reasons I like going out and hearing young players and young acts, as well as some of the older guys that are still really doing cool shit.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's really interesting to see that the music is live. The environment is not conducive to art. It's really difficult. What's going on in this city now is, all of that circuit that we grew up with is, well, the rock circuit went a long time ago, right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
But the neighborhood pub circuit that I did with Bob.
Yes, and I did that.
It died a long time.
Yeah, I did that too. You could see how that was like. You'd be playing 7 nights a week, or 6 nights a week. Then it went to 4. Then it went to 3. Then it went to 2. Then it went to 1.
Oh yeah, no, the way that like for instance how did I survive with the Bobcats? Well, we were kind of diverse within being an old band, right?
Yeah.
So we appealed to a certain demographic, and the way that we survived was playing, a little house gig we had at the Dover Arms was once a week every Sunday.
Yeah.
And then we do the little pubs, and there was no money in it. We're just, I teach guitar on top of it all. Bob would do some solo gigs.
Mm-hmm.
The other two guys had jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So there again, you have a much different type of thing. We couldn't do. We weren't directed towards trying to do anything original or anything like that. We were just directed towards playing really good music that people wanted to hear it.
Yeah, that's right.
And and the way we survived is every once in a while we get a casino gig. Every once in a while we get like a corporate gig. Every once in a while we get something that would give us a little boost. But it was tough going. It got tougher and tougher.
Yeah. I
did all the business, right?
Yeah.
I had to do. I always do the business. I'm the guy who's post Calso and all that. I just entirely do all the business.
And it was tough because I did that too when I played the circuit stuff too. I did all the bookings and I could tell when things were changing. You could see it, and you could see the money changing, and you could see you knew the bottom was going to drop out at some point. I basically at some point just said I dropped out of it, and that's it. I'm done. I'm not doing this no more. And people.
Well, in a way, that's where I am now. It happened really in a tragical way because Bob passed away.
Yes.
And we were a team, right, for many, many years. And,
yeah.
Not only, I saw it going down in the time when he was still alive.
Yeah, I remember that because I came and seen you guys play. Yeah, I know. I remember talking to you and seeing you guys. Yeah, and I had stopped like maybe 5-6 years before that. I just, when I played and played a pub, and especially like I said something last night to somebody. We were rehearsing last night, one of my bands, and last night I was saying, my drummer was saying, I remember playing New Year's gigs. I said, New Year's gigs got worse and worse every time I did one. I said, everybody would come out from 8 o'clock to midnight, and midnight would strike, and everybody'd go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and then the band would be sitting around, for 2 more hours with just the staff. I says, boy, the odd place would shut the doors, and then we could just party,
Yeah, well, my experience was different from that, but that was a valid experience. What we ended up doing is that, I didn't miss a New Year's gig for like decades.
Yeah.
And but how it worked with us is we had regular clients who loved us.
Yeah.
We did 7 years in a row at the Vancouver Golf Club.
Oh yes,
They treated us like gods. We had our own green room.
That's nice.
And people would hang around, but when they left, we're fine, But they would hang around. We'd get out of there. We'd quit playing around 1:15 or something.
Yeah.
Maybe 1:30. And so we were an anomaly because I saw all my friends around me that and we made good money too. They paid us well. But the thing is, I saw people around me, really heavy duty pros, that were playing for $300, or and if they could get a gig, and I could see it. We were in a bit of a bubble, a thing that, was different from the average sort of situation.
Yeah.
We weren't on that level of the corporate bands, which were on the level above us, who were making real good money a lot.
Yeah. I used to
no chicks in the band.
I used to do the what I ended up doing to survive for one point is I started doing booking the union convention gigs, right? And I would be the booker. So I ended up booking, but I ended up like, say I'd book Elio's band Full Moon. Well, then Elio's band would say, we want you to come and play with us that night, because the crowd.
Cool.
And so I say, okay, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to get paid for playing, and I'm going to take my cut, right?
Well, of course.
And so, it was great. I mean, Elio and I made like, up to like $500 for 2 hours, right?
Exactly.
It was just
those kind of gigs that they float. But the thing is that if you've got a band, like I mentioned, yes, Full Moon, we had a band as well, the Big Dog Band, Mike Henry, myself, and then the Bobcats. To keep a band together and not having subs all the time and things change.
Oh yeah.
You have to have money.
Yes, you do. Yes, yeah, you do.
As soon as work starts getting shaky, it becomes more and more difficult. We were fortunate because Bob and I were, literally lifetime players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were committed to what we were doing. We do the odd thing outside of it. But, it was the odd thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guys, the thing that kept our thing going is that they weren't looking for other gigs because they had day jobs.
Right.
And every once in a while we'd have to bring a sub in. Like our original bass player in the Bobcats was Jimmy Walker. He played with us for 5 years, and then John Savoy played with us for the next 11.
Right.
And so, if John would sometimes think, we got a gig with this progressive metal guy. I can't think of his name now, but he's really big. He played Albert's Hall in London, right?
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Townsend.
That's it, Mr. Townsend. Yeah, he still gets his videos still play, Danny, like on major rotation too.
Oh, he's big.
Yeah.
He played with Seth Van. He played with what's his name? Not Seth Van. The other guy, Steve Vai.
Steve Vai, yeah.
But anyway, but the long and the short of it is, that couldn't be more different from the Bobcats. but anyway, it's not my cup of tea.
But that's the variety, like we were saying, right?
Yeah, but that's pushing it, I'd say. But anyway, the good news is that it opened a bunch of doors for Jean to be recognized, and we met some good people, and got to play one song at the Royal Albert, which is really a big deal.
That is cool.
So we all had our, but we were still at the core of it committed to the Bobcats, right?
Yeah.
And as time went by, it became more difficult for me doing the booking, but Bob did more solo gigs, and I did more teaching, guitar teaching. And the other guys had their jobs. So we were able not to say the hell with it, right? We were able to just continue. And even though we were hitting hard times, we still stayed together, right? We knew for sure we had 4 gigs a month at Dover. And, we might, get a 2-nighter. We had the Admiral once a month. That was a regular. And then we tried to fill in the blanks. But a lot of places were going down.
Yeah.
Rusty Gull went down. Firefighters turned into a half a gig for no money. The casinos, which we played quite regularly, the Cafe St. Germain, they changed. They got rid of her and they changed hands, and it became a 1-nighter rather than a 2-nighter.
Right.
And the money went down, and they weren't interested in that. So they got rid of not just us, but a lot of the bands that had been on Kathy's thing, because they wanted to make a big change, right?
Yeah.
So we're sitting there like all this crap is happening, and it's like I'm thinking, well, what the hell are we going to do here? You get the odd good gig, but and tragically, what happened is Bob passed away.
Yeah.
And when Bob passed away, it was devastating for all of us.
Yeah.
We were really good friends. I went back 43 years with him.
Yes, that's a long time. Yeah, Dan. That
Oh
sure
God, I played 23 years of those years.
Wow.
That's a lot of playing, right? And a lot of respect, and I think we had something really special. And but aside from that aspect, which is really a big aspect, but aside from that aspect, when you've got a band that's got a position and got clients, and all of a sudden, it stops in its tracks, you got to start again.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it and said, you know what? I'm not, like you did. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do a house club. For one thing, I couldn't get the level of players that we had.
Yeah.
When you're, what would I offer? $100 a month or $200 a month.
Yeah, that's just not enough. It's just not enough.
It's silly,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I guess the culture has developed now where people are playing for the door or really low money.
Yeah.
Or nothing.
Or nothing, yeah. And I talked to my drummer about that too. We were having long conversations about that. He was saying when he got offered to do a New Year's gig about a couple of years ago with this one guy, and he says, he says, okay, I'll learn the songs, I'll do it. How much you paying me? And he goes, pay you $150 for the night. He says, no, I don't think so. He said,
No.
I want at least $300 for New Year's. He says, I ain't doing it at all. And so he says, well, let me get back to you and think about it.
And that never happened, right?
So he gets back to him and he says, I got so-and-so to do it for $125.
Exactly.
So he says,
that's the kind of environment you're in where,
yeah.
it's, I mean, that is really lame, I have to say.
It is. It's really lame. He goes. My buddy my drummer just said, I'm glad. Goodbye. See you later.
I bet he was. I mean, you don't want to put yourself through all that learning and then do a gig and make $150.
Oh, I know. Yeah. He says, I'm not going backwards. He told me.
That's kind of what it is now. I mean, I have continued to do some gigs as a guitar player since the Bobcats ended. Nowhere near as much as Ovies. I've done But I've done gigs for, I did a gig for the Door at Fairview. I made $35.
Fuck.
It was like totally ridiculous. I would never do that again.
Yeah.
It was a bad night. But, even still, the best you can hope for. Like I did a gig on the weekend at Rocky Point Park with Al Foreman and, real good people like, Chris Northwest, Roger Grant.
Oh, yeah.
Steve William and Jerry Cook. The real serious guys who did an R&B thing. And I made $200. I don't have a problem with that.
No, that's not too bad. Yeah.
But that, in this day, that people like ourselves who've been around the scene for a long time.
Yes.
We're at the other end of our, it's, what do you want to call it, a career? Whatever. And, you found yourself employment outside. I'm old enough now, I get meager pensions. And just survive,
Yeah. And like we said, like we know things have changed, and they're not all changed for the worse either, right? It's just things have changed. It's just the music's changed and everything. Like I was talking to somebody the other day. They said, "Oh, you went and saw Paul McCartney. How was that?" I says, guy does a 3.5 hour show. I mean, I don't know what to say. Was it top notch? I says, pretty close. I says, but you stay up there for 3.5 hours and do that, right?
Right.
It was really intense. I mean, he wouldn't stop. Like, it was like, wow, this guy's like, he's possessed.
Well, he's also quite old.
Yeah.
And and he's fit. And he loves to do it just like Ringo loves to do it.
Yeah, it just blows your mind. So
these guys but they're also in a different zone in that, if you've been somebody, I mean, you see it on a lower level, say a group like, say, Streetheart.
Yeah.
They can go out and they can tour, or Loverboy, they can go out and tour. They're quite much bigger than Streetheart. But, if you've had something that's still marketable, if you've never done it with your band,
yeah.
or you've only had limited success. An example would be Harlequin.
Yes.
Harlequin was really, really good, but they only really had a couple of tunes that were hits, and they never went international.
That's right.
So, I mean, Loverboy's the strongest of them all, but, Trooper is another one.
Yeah.
Those. But if you're on the way up, or you've just never been, but you've been in the scene, in the trenches, it is a really, really rough go.
It is. It's a hard slug, right? Yeah, and you got. And the thing is, the thing I've learned over the years is, well, even up to this year, like I last year we went down to L.A. and played and played a music conference where my manager runs this conference, and we listened to we played, and the band played really well, and we've got a couple good songs, But you know, it's still the same old thing. You get people coming up to you and going, you know what? You got really good songs. We need another 10. You know, or they'll say to you, you know what? I've got 5 bands that sound like you. You know, and you go,
it's an unfortunate fact.
yeah, and that's a fact. And so what I did is we came back this time, and everybody says, so what are we going to do? I says, we're going to really dig down, and we're going to change the way we're writing, and not going to change what we want, where we want to go with our songs, but we're going to open up the book and start experimenting and trying some things that maybe we should have done last time around, right? And I said, so we're going to actually listen to advice, I said, and take that advice at, you know, with a grain of salt, but you know,
it depends where the advice comes from too.
Yes, and it came from really good people, right? It came from people who are being very honest and very direct, right? And just saying, you know, this is what I feel, right? And this is what I think, and you can like it or not, but this is what I say, right? And so when you listen to, and when people speak, you know, as they say, speak truth to truth, when you listen to that, then you know, like, you know, I mean, I knew when I get the odd person who would be rude, you know, like they were actually being rude, and then you go, okay, that's you know, either they're being really personal or they just don't give a shit, right, about talking to you at all. But when I met the odd 2 or 3 people that were very, very honest and done the industry for 100 years, you just go, okay, I'm going to pay attention to some of what they're saying, because it's a learning curve, right? And I told the guys in my band, even at my age, it's still a learning curve, you know. And that's what I've done. I took the positive from it and brought it back, right? So that's what I did.
That's the way to do it, I'd say. You know, it's like, as long as you want to keep pursuing that original thing, you know, you have to be very. I mean, even back in the day, here's a good example. You know, there's a band called Al and the Silvertones that got together in 1957, I think it was.
Yeah.
They became the Guess Who.
That's right.
And they slugged out. The first record they did was in 1961, I think. It was called a Tribute to Buddy Holly.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it didn't do anything, but, you know, that was their beginnings. And they just kept on grinding. They had success with Shaking All Over, which wasn't their song.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just using them as an example. They ground it out and ground it out. All the way up to 1969 was the first. That's when everything exploded for them.
Yeah.
Right? And that's all the hits. It could have just as easily not happened.
That's right.
But the way that they did it, and for all of the other bands, like I mentioned earlier in our conversation, there were some really good bands, and some of them had really good records.
That's right.
Some of them came close. So there's a bit of a luck of the draw in those times.
Yeah.
What we have now, it was highly competitive.
Yes.
And it was highly American centric, as it still is.
It still is. Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, it is an international thing now with the internet and all that. But what it's created is an incredibly crowded playing field.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where, you know, I mean, when we came up, it was encouraged. You know, at a certain point, Beatles really did it to be different. You know.
Yeah.
And it became more and more that way, and they take chances like crazy on anything. And you know, remember how many albums were coming out in the '60s?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know.
And everything from Hendrix to, you know, to Cream to Crosby, Stills and Nash later, and you know, Buffalo Springfield. You know, we're talking like huge differences in styles.
Exactly.
But it was the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, it was.
It was that kind of a time, right?
Yeah. That's so true.
It changed. It changed over time. It became much more compartmentalized, much more genre specific.
Yes. Well, I did that when I had a band when you were around called when you were playing with Billy and that. I had a band around the same, and we got into the country thing. I had a band called Cosmic Heroes, and we were kind of a cross section between, you know, some pretty rocky stuff, and then we would go all the way across to a country kind of bluesy song, right? You know.
Yeah. And
we had one hit on the radio across Canada, and
cool.
And it called All the Magic, and it was doing really well. And the record labels, though, you know, so we could send stuff to the labels back then, you know, and see what they would say. And the labels would go, you know, that's a great song. That's why it's getting all the airplay on the radio, and that's what we like. So how come the other songs are so different? Because they wanted to take us and put us in a little, you know, little package, and you have to sound like this. And I said to them, No, I says, you know, we in this band we grew up listening to the Beatles, the Stones, the Beach Boys, you know, whoever, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. We listened to 1,000 bands with 1,000 different takes on songs. So I said, you're asking us to take one style and clone it. And I said, that's not what this.
New thing. That's not a new thing.
Yeah, it's not a new thing. And I says, we're just not going to do it, right? And so
well, the thing is, though, from a marketing point of view, I totally get it.
I get it.
If you think back to the '60s, right, when the Mersey beat happened, every band had a suit after the Beatles.
Oh yes, exactly.
You know, and everybody had the haircut, and the tunes were very much in the Mersey beat sound or the London sound. You know, just like the surf thing that happened in the America, all, you know, the wall of sound stuff. There was a definite homogenized sort of thing about it.
That's
even
right.
Even if it was good, but the whole point of it was the record companies. They wanted to have something they could market that was identifiable.
Oh, of course.
You know, and what happened though with the explosion of the Beatles turning into, you know, the Rubber Soul and forward, it became a lot different world. But I think in a lot of ways, like you talked about the 45s, I said it was sort of the new ones or the MP3s.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's the same thing now, where you have to be quite specific. You have to fall into a slot, you know. And the fact is, there are no real record labels unless you're like Kanye West or some idiot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you look at what is popular music now, I mean, it's not all terrible, but a lot of it is.
Yes.
And you know, but what it is, it's manufactured.
That's right.
And the fact is, if you're trying to be competitive with that, you haven't got a hope. That's why you have such an underground scene now.
Yes.
You know, even in metal, like if you look in metal, you know, there's very specific genres within metal, right?
Oh, there's hundreds.
You know?
There's hundreds, yeah. There's tons.
There's goth.
Yeah, there's goth. There's black metal. There's so, and some of it sounds too much the same. But after a while,
no, but that's the point, though. That's the point.
Yeah.
The audience, you know, the audience for that stuff doesn't want to hear evolution.
No,
that's not what they want to hear, and that's why. You know, a good example of a band that was, you know, that happened that was really eclectic, but then when you see what happened after, the Guess Who, I keep going back to them, but the Guess Who were very eclectic in their hits, or everything from you know, These Eyes to No Time.
Yep.
You know, they're very different. Undone is way different. You know.
Yep.
Whereas when Bachman came out of that thing, and when he tried to do, you know, something that was sort of, you know, a country rock thing, it didn't work, right? Mm-hmm. He did Brave Belt.
He did Brave Belt. Yep.
He got smart, you know. I mean, he always had a very commercial ear. He knew that people wanted to hear something that was familiar, and that was, but still had some originality. But there was enough in there. Like, listen to Let It Ride.
Yeah.
You'll hear Doobie Brothers rhythm, and you'll hear Led Zeppelin riff.
Yeah.
You know, so you know the crafting of the pop song is a thing that, you know, it's you know. I'm not saying you were making the wrong decision about what you were saying, but it's basically commercial death.
Oh yeah, of course, and in you know, that back then we just didn't care enough. You know what I mean? Like we just, you know, we're gonna play.
You didn't even know, probably. You know, I mean, when you're in that kind of you know, you get full of a little bit of success and you think you can do anything.
Yes.
And,
well, I never forget. I had the producer at the time. Ray Folberg, right? Ray used to be in the Scissors and the Punk Sessions and stuff, right? And he managed Art Bergman and stuff. So
I know I worked with him once.
Yeah, he's such a nice man. And Ray said to me once when we went in and started recording, he goes, "Okay," he says, "this song's really good. That song's all right." He says, "Yeah, this is sort of all fitting in the same sort of genre." And I said, "Well, you know, we just got into dealing with record labels on the last album about this, and this." And he says, "Well, when you become the Rolling Stones," he said, "or the Beatles," he says, "then we'll all start listening to you guys." Right?
That's exactly true.
And I just started laughing. I went,
"Oh, it's hardcore reality."
Yeah, no shit, eh? Then you wake up.
You can look at artists who had the world by the tail, and then they went sideways trying to do something experimental, and they lost it, and they never got it again.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, if you think about, you know, about that, you know, when you compare eras, it's almost not really a very smart idea, because the eras are different.
They are.
You know, I mean, the Stones could go from everything from Satisfaction to Lady Jane. You know.
Yeah.
Because they were the Stones.
Yeah.
The Beatles could go from everything from Helter Skelter to In My Life. You know.
Yeah.
Because they were the Beatles.
Yeah,
they
I know.
could get away with murder. I mean, not murder, but they could do whatever they wanted, right?
That's right. That's right.
You get a band coming up, and that's not how it works.
No, that's not how it works at all. That's right. That's right. So, in closing here, Dan.
Okay.
What?
On a nice note.
I sort of have to get there because the editor's going to go.
Razor blades on you.
Yeah. No, I could go all night, actually, Dan. You know me. I could talk.
I love doing this. I do another one anytime. I think this is really cool.
Well, we will. And you know what? What I want to do, I'm serious. Next year, we'll start with. I would like to get you to. I know you're a big movie buff. I would like to have you critique some of the movies you go and see too, because I think people would find that interesting.
I'm a big movie freak.
Yeah, I know you are.
The David Crosby documentary.
Oh, did you see that? How was that?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Really, 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 brutally honest. He doesn't pull any punches.
No.
And the archival stuff and the interviews and.
Wow, I'm going to have to go and see that.
A phenomenal movie. But yeah, I'm a movie buff, and I go to see commercial movies, and I go to see
everything.
Like documentaries a lot. I have a pretty diverse taste, and I would love to do that. It'd be very cool.
I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be good for people to get a perspective from somebody who's doing that, and especially on the net, right? And it gets out to people. We'll do that. So, Danny, in closing, you're just still playing, right? You're still getting out there and playing music anyways, right? You don't care, right? You're just having a good time.
I do some playing. It's quite limited.
Right.
I mean, frankly, I'm a band guy.
Yeah.
And that's where I come from. So for me, it's quite casual, and I enjoy doing it. But it's just such a. I feel a void, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I do enjoy playing, and I've actually been playing a lot at home and doing stuff that has zero to do with gigging. I've been playing like in Dad tuning and playing, a nylon string guitar.
Cool.
Listening to stuff that that I always liked that I never really pursued, and it's kind of that it's kind of a musical bucket list thing.
That's very cool. Yeah, because I do. I've just been songwriting like crazy for the last
fantastic.
3-4 months, and you know what? I can actually see that I've actually improved because I can see how I'm actually some songs are not taking very long. You know what I mean? Like I know where to put this, where this is going to sound like this, and it's just like I'm just going, holy shit! I'm actually getting faster at this, and I sort of know what I want to do, right? So
you get on a roll.
Yeah, and so when I write lyrics every morning, I get up and I don't care if it's a piece of crap word or two a sentence, I jot it down, and the more I do that, the more
that you don't judge this stuff when you're doing it.
No,
just do it.
You just do it, and you see where it goes, right? So that's what I've been doing. So, but I am glad you're doing that because that just you just keep growing and learning that way, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't have I'm 68.
Yeah.
Well, as of August 30th. So I mean, I'm not foolish enough to think that I'm going to develop a career at this point.
No, I get you.
But I've certainly had a life.
Yeah, you sure have.
And and I mean, I could go on. Oh, another guy I played with, I never mentioned. I played with Amos Garrett.
Oh yes, Amos Garrett. I remember seeing Amos.
That was a real ticket for me.
Yeah.
And, I mean, those kind of things. I look back. If you look at my bio online, it'll kind of make you choke. It's kind. I mean, I touched on some of this stuff, but there was a lot of stuff went on.
Well, then we'll have to. We'll do it again. We'll do the whole thing again. I promise you, we'll do that, Dan.
We can just ask different questions and do different things. And
yeah, let's do it again, and then when we'll do it again too, and then we'll in the new year we'll definitely start up on the movies because let's do it because I think that'll be so much fun.
When are you going to be airing this thing on the internet?
I'm thinking probably October because I've got our buddy from London, England coming up in September, Pierre.
Oh, right on. So excellent. I haven't seen Pierre in a million years.
Yeah, so he's doing really well over there, right? He's playing in a couple bands, and he's actually sort of into personal managing artists too.
Really?
Yeah, he's getting into that. So he was talking.
He's diversifying. I mean, that's what we talked about earlier.
Yes, and he's saying the same thing. It's, like you say, it's around the world. It's the same thing. He was saying in the interview, there's nobody, like, there's no gigs in England. And London's, like, dead. Live music in London's dead. And so he was talking to me about that. And actually, he was mentioning you in the interview. He says, I see Danny's representative for Tokai, right?
Oh, but yeah, that's yeah.
But you know what Pierre's like. It's like, oh, I see Danny's online and Danny's doing this, and you know.
Yeah.
So
the thing about the internet is it can paint a little unrealistic picture of reality.
Yeah, but it sure does. I'll let you go, Dan, and then we'll catch you up real soon. Okay, so this will be on in October for you.
Well, we'll see each other before then. You can just let me know what's going on.
Yeah, we'll go to Peony.
All right. Okay.
See you.
Good idea. Are you going to go to Peony?
I'm going to go to quite a few shows, and if you need a free pass, I got an extra pass or two.
You do? Oh, cool. Well, just give me a call and let me know which ones you're going to. We can go together.
You know what? We should go and see Smokey Robinson. That would be amazing.
Oh, I'd love to see Smokey.
Yeah, I think we should. I'll call you. I'll get you the date, and I'll call you back for that.
All right, Joe. Well,
all right.
Thanks for doing this, man. I'm glad we did it.
I'm glad we did it too. You take care, Dan.
Right. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. This is Izzy Dakota Jones, and just want to say that was great talking to Danny, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll have Danny back again real soon, like we said. He's got tons of stories, tons of things to talk about in the music industry and just in general in music, which is great. And don't forget, October 18th, Horse Opera will be playing at the Princeton, and we're going to be playing Horse Opera's interview in November. So a shout out to the guys in Horse Opera and everything. Their podcast is going to be November, but they've got a date October 18th at the Princeton in the heart of the hood. So check them out, and then check out once you check them out, it'd be cool for you to check up and follow them up on their podcast in November. This is Izzy Dakota Jones with the Art of Doing podcast. Take care.